Is this working? Oh, here we go. Now we're in business. Are all the kids downstairs? I've only said one accidental expletive so far wearing this, so we got that out of the way. I figured there'd be a few people in here that would appreciate that. Oh, gosh, you guys. Some of you have been here for a long time. I believe the Durango Vineyard has been in existence for 10 years, I think. Was it maybe 2013? Where are the OGs in here that know? 2013. All right, Nate Dogg says 10 years. And some of you, have, like me, have sort of just walked in here, maybe for the first time, or maybe it's been a couple times. Lisa and I, my wife, have only been, and little Lucy, who you probably heard during the prayer, have been here only for about a month. And we have kind of a fun story of how we landed here. But maybe some of you were aware that they were looking for a little bit of help here, and maybe some of you weren't, but here we are. We're here. And we're stoked to be in Durango. We're stoked to be in this community and this church. It's been fun to learning the history of the ups and downs and how this community has weathered so many different seasons of life, really. And now we're here in this time, which I think is a really fun moment of growth and, springtime and just energy, potential building of getting to do something really fun there. And so we're excited to be a part of it. But I figured instead of just, DJ sort of opened up this study of the book of Hebrews last week, which I was really excited about because I think Hebrews is a absolutely fascinating book if you're a sort of Bible nerd like I am and are interested in all the details of that. Babies make the most amazing sounds. I don't know. If you've ever heard of babies sleep, it's like both stressful and exciting. I was really excited when DJ sort of chose this, sort of leading into Easter and where the season of the church is now. That's my daughter. You'll hear her the entire time, probably. Yeah. Because I think it speaks something, at least to me, as somebody who's stepping into this community and thinking about, like, what, if I could say anything, if these people could somehow get to know me and feel like a sense of trust in who I am, or really just speak about even just the simplest parts of our faith. Strangely enough, Hebrews 2 might be that chapter of that book for me, which I'm excited about. But let me back up. I'll give you a little bit of our history, and that'll lead into, I guess, sort of what we're talking about tonight. But so Lisa and I grew up in Texas. Any Texans in here originally? No, everybody here is like, okay, we got some Texans. Yeah, it's probably, the jury's out on Texans probably in this town for the locals, They're like, we love them, but I don't know, like they spend a lot of time here, so, which is probably how I landed here. We landed here because I spent, I think every dollar I had in high school and college road tripping through the night to get to Colorado to play in the mountains. But Lisa and I actually are both from Texas. I grew up in Central Texas in a small town, about 2,000 people, just outside of Austin, called Dripping Springs, which is actually now like the wedding capital of Texas, I guess, somehow. It's a really beautiful spot. And Lisa grew up in Midland, Texas, so Friday Night Lights, folks. There you go. There you have it. And we actually met at Texas A&M University, Gigamags. We got some magazine here too, sweet. Some of you were like, why is this guy telling us about his undergraduate, where he got his degree from? And that's a really important thing if you're from Texas. So there you go. Lisa was supposed to go to Baylor, but she went to A&M, and somehow that divine appointment, we met and dated. And when we both graduated from A&M, I had about $200 to my name, I think. And Lisa wanted to go live overseas and do something really fun, and I was like, I kind of just want to move to Colorado. Would you want to do that? And so we took a risk on moving to Boulder in 2009. We had been married 2 weeks and landed in Boulder. And we were like, maybe we'll just spend some time here and enjoy sort of our newlywed life. And boom, 14 years later, we were still there. And so a lot of things happened in those early years of our marriage and in our 20s. As you know, I think your 20s are a really good time of sort of wandering and searching and trying a lot of different jobs. And we did a lot of fun things. We were involved in a lot of different communities. Kind of what goes into some of my history was I started racing bikes at an elite level here in the United States, which was a really fun season. Lisa went back to school. We walked through a lot of different things. And as I was sort of, even today, as I was thinking about like, how much of my story do I want to share? I was kind of thinking about like, I could easily just share the highlight reel of my life, right? I could give you like all the fun, interesting things, right, that I would share on Instagram or something else. Like I could give you an amazing picture of our life and the things that we've gotten to do, which God has given us an amazing opportunity to do a lot of amazing things. But the truth of the matter is that our life together in our marriage and our life in our faith life, our jobs, like just what it means to be a person, right, has been riddled with all sorts of hard and difficult things, right? I mean, you can probably go back in your own life, and there's been amazing high moments, and yet there's also been just wildly challenging seasons. And I could probably talk ad nauseum about those things. But I think when I think back through all those different moments of grief or loss, good moments too, obviously, but the really challenging times, especially challenging times of faith, we were going like, what is this? Like I thought sort of this faith life was supposed to kind of add up to God leading me down this path of blessing or like almost shielding me or protecting me from hard things, or maybe I wouldn't have gotten laid off, or maybe I'd have a clear direction on my life, or maybe my marriage would never have problems or something. And in reality, that's just not the way it goes, right? Like anyone who's lived long enough realizes that like God doesn't necessarily keep all the hard and difficult things from our lives, but actually meets us in those moments in incredibly powerful ways. And to me, when I think about the book of Hebrews, right, like DJ kind of launched into the first few passages. I think these first 3 verses of chapter 1 are like unbelievable, and I think they're probably like the thesis statement to some degree of the entire book. What I read and we're going to read these here in a minute, but what I read when I spend time in this is that there is something about the nature of God that actually does not withdraw from us in difficult moments or in the middle of our stuff. Actually, in those moments, it is when God actually moves closer and draws nearer to us in the hard times. Right? So in this whole conversation about like, okay, so if Jesus reveals the true nature of God, what does Jesus do that reveals that nature? Well, Jesus comes to us, right? Comes to our issues, comes to our problems. It doesn't run away and actually pull back. It actually says, no, it's for those reasons that I actually am coming to closest relationship with you. And so when I think back to just like our time and our adult life and all the different things that we've been through, this literally might be like the hinge that my personal faith hangs on. Is that it doesn't matter what I've gone through, how much doubt that I have in my life, how much deconstruction of my faith there was, all the different questions that the Bible raises, how many different questions that society and culture raises. It doesn't matter actually. All those things like matter, but It's actually because of those things that Jesus came to be human, to reveal to us the true nature of God. Like that is why I follow Jesus, because I see the nature of God in the way that Jesus moves. Not only then, but now, today, in the Spirit within us. I mean, that is literally, that might even be the only definition of Christianity that we need, is that we have access to Jesus himself. And there's a million implications of what that means. But to me, as I was sort of like, what am I going to share with these people? And they've never heard me speak, and they don't even know who I am. And will they trust me? I'm like, the only thing, I mean, if I could have one sermon, it might be this, is that we come to know the nature of God and how Jesus draws near to us as a person. As a person. As a person in relationship. Something that's familiar. Something that we can touch, that we can see, that we can smell, that weeps, that feels emotions, that has all of the capabilities of humanity within him. That's the kind of God that I can follow. That's the kind of God that I can get to know. And so that's what the writer of Hebrews basically starts with. I'm actually going to read, you can throw up those first, I like never use PowerPoint, so this is going to be a new thing for me, guys. There's going to be some hiccups. These are the first three verses that DJ read last week, but it says at the very beginning of the book, it says, in the past, okay, before Jesus, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets and at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, in our time, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things and through whom he also made the universe. How's that for a statement? He's spoken to us through his Son, who he appointed heir of all things, and through whom he also made everything that you see. And then verse 3, it says, the Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. And after he provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty of heaven. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being. There is an incredible amount of encouragement just in that statement. And I think it's that, and there's this, if you've been in church a while or something, or you've heard this word, the incarnation, which basically just means God incarnate or God enfleshed, which is Jesus. And I think the basic message of that incarnation is that God came to join us in all things. To me, this is like the most compelling thing about our faith, that actually the definition of holiness to God is not to somehow separate, but actually to draw near. All right, let me say that again. Maybe you've heard the word holy or holiness before, but I think Jesus actually defines what holiness is. That holiness isn't retracting and somehow being set apart for the sake of being set apart. Holiness is being set apart so then you can enter in. Right? The point of the incarnation is that God says, you know what? There are some things going on here that I actually want to step into, that I want to root out, that I want to speak truth to, that I want to show love to. There are some places of fear that I want to touch with love and healing. And we all have those things. I mean, gosh, that is the story of my life. Like I said, I could tell you all about the highlight reel, but honestly, it wouldn't be that impressive. What's impressive is how God has touched the broken parts of my life with healing, with love. And so basically the writer continues on in chapter 2 with the same idea. And I just want to draw that out because I think there are some really incredible things here. We tracking? How are we doing? Good? Yeah? Sweet. I wish I had something funny to say right now because that was kind of an intense moment. But I don't. In the notes, there's no joke right there in between. All right, let's get sorted here, Brian. This is not big enough. Pulpit. So we need 2 pulpits. It's the kind of sermon we had today. It was a 2-pulpit sermon. Okay. So, the writer of Hebrews, if you know anything about this book, and DJ kind of spoke about it a little bit last week, but the writer of Hebrews is essentially trying to convince the Hebrew people, right, that Jesus actually is who he said he was, right, which is a message we all need to hear, right? I mean, that was what he challenged people to believe, was like, I actually am who I say I am, is also why he was murdered. And so the writer of Hebrews is trying to do the same thing, but there's some goodness in here that I want to draw out. So we're going to go to chapter 2 and just go, I'm going to read all of verse 5 through 9. And there's some stuff about angels. There's some kind of confusing things in here, but I'm going to kind of bring out the context a little bit and then nail down what the author is trying to say. Here we go. So it says, it is not to angels that he has subjected the world to come, about which we are speaking, but there is a place where someone has testified. What is mankind that you are mindful of them? He's actually quoting Psalm here. What is mankind that you are mindful of them, and the Son of Man that you would care for him? You made them a little lower than angels, and you crowned them with glory and honor, and put everything under their feet. And in putting everything under them, God left nothing that is not subject to them, yet at present we do not see everything subject to them. Okay, that's kind of confusing. Let's keep reading. Well, let me back up. What I think the author is saying is that we essentially don't see everything that's happening in the world. Okay, if I could just sum up what this is, right? There's a lot of details going on in here. Or in other words, you don't see everything that's happening in your life. You don't understand probably a lot of things going on around you. I have a lot of questions. You probably have a lot of questions. You might even have questions for God about just some answers about some things in your life. But this is what the author says. I think this is so understated. It says this in verse 9. But we do see Jesus. But we do see Jesus. We don't understand everything, but you know what we do see? We see Jesus, who was made lower than the angels for a little while, now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. I'm just going to read verse 9 one more time. But we see Jesus, who was made lower than the angels for a little while, now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. What this is saying is that there is so many things about our life that we don't understand, but you do see Jesus. There's so many probably theological questions and questions about maybe that the Bible raises himself or life raises that we don't understand, that we might not ever have answers for. I went to seminary, and there were a lot of points in my Old Testament classes that my Old Testament professors were going, yeah, I'm not entirely sure about this one, guys. I'm not gonna jump over it, but I don't have an answer for what this means, right? Which is how I feel about life sometimes. But we do see Jesus. Actually, the life of Jesus, the model of Jesus, the presence of Jesus is actually something that we can hang our hats on. It says that Jesus was crowned in glory and honor because he suffered death so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. It's essentially saying that God was not okay with the situation that we were in. And so by his grace, essentially by his love, he entered into our space to take care of it. so that by the grace of God, by God's love for us, he actually might bear the burdens of the things that we have. When I think back to all those different moments throughout our life, man, I needed somebody to help me bear those burdens. And man, was I happy and excited that that is what God actually chooses to do. That God chooses to help bear the burdens that we have. I mean, I don't know. Is this not just mind-blowing to you that we actually have, like, the God that we follow, the God that we worship, the God that says is going to be with us, actually cares enough and loves you enough to actually enter into your world and stand with you in the middle of it? To me, that is everything. Right? That is the difference between Christianity and following Jesus and so many other practices that you can do in life, religious or non-religious. Right? That God himself would somehow put on flesh and come and meet me in my space as a human and actually encounter and experience the things that I experience. That's crazy. And yet he does. He keeps going. Verse 14 through 18. Those up there? Yep. Right, here we go. It says, since the children have flesh and blood, since we are the children, since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might actually break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. For surely it is not the angels he helps, but Abraham's descendants, that's us. It's actually because that we have flesh and blood that God chose to share in our humanity. Keeps going, verse 17. It says, for this reason, he had to be made like them, right? Jesus had to be made like us, fully human in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. Because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. So I don't know if you know what a high priest is. I mean, this is really Jewish language that they're talking about. A lot of the context of this passage is specifically for the Hebrew people. But the high priest essentially was somebody who sort of stood in the gap for people. Right? They were like in service to God, but they were the advocate for the people. They were the advocate for us. And so what the writer is saying is that Jesus actually being made fully human in every way so that he could become our advocate, our high priest, somebody that stands in the ditches with us. For this reason, he had to be made like them. Because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. I don't know, you guys. I just think this message is potentially like the most compelling message in all of Scripture. And is so unique to our faith. That God himself would not only reveal the character of God in the life of Jesus, but that he would enter into our space, would enter into our mess, would stand in the gap with us. That God somehow doesn't retract and says, oh no, those things are disqualified for the life of God, right? Like I don't have time for those. No, it's actually the things that all of us are ashamed of. It's the things that we sweep under the rug, the things that we put in the dark corner of our room, right? The things we don't want anyone to see, that God actually says, that's the point of me coming to you as a person, was to share in the humanity of what you experience. Right? Like, we're not supposed to be faith robots. We're supposed to be human people just trying to live in communion with God. I mean, that should like liberate you. Right? I mean, that's what this is really talking about, is liberation, right? so that by his death he might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that God himself is about liberating you. I mean, let's go. Right? That's the Exodus story. I'll be the liberator. I'll be the one that hears your cries. I'll be the one that moves towards you when you're feeling oppressed. That story's for everybody. And so I think there's 3 sort of takeaways to this. I'm trying to keep this short because this could be like an hour long. But I think there's 3 takeaways to me out of here. And the first one is this, is that Jesus is not intimidated by our mess. He is not intimidated by your mess. It's actually our mess. That's the point of why he wants to be in communion with us. That's the point. Right? Like we feel like we got to clean up to come to church. We got to clean up to pray. We got to clean up to do God things. We got to clean up. He's going, no, man, that's not how it works. No cleaning up involved. There could be some growing up potentially, but right now it's just let me be with you. And anybody who's ever met with God in prayer in a true and genuine way has encountered that truth. Right? Like the scriptures speak about it. The nature of Jesus speaks about it. But I can bet you half this room has said, you know what? In that time of my life, when I was super ashamed and I felt like my life was coming apart, Jesus met with me and said, man, you're okay. You're okay. We're going to be okay here. Things are messy, but that's when I do my best work. And so I think there's a huge invitation here for us. A huge invitation. The second is, and this is sort of in the second section of the passage that I read, but is that Jesus gives us a way out. I think in any moment that feels completely hopeless and completely full of despair, Jesus gives us a way out. There's some element of hope to hold on to. There's some invitation of trust to say, you know what, this sucks. I don't know if I'm going to fix it for you, but you know what, I'm here with you and I'm going to help guide you out of it. I can literally think of like 20 moments in Lisa and I's life where we were like, oh my goodness, like I don't know about this. And somehow in the like stumbling faith that we had, God said, here's the door, buddy. Come on, let's go. And the third one is, I think maybe the most important, is that Jesus stands in solidarity with us. And that's everybody, all people, every age, right? Every nation, every skin color, every orientation, every education level, every socioeconomic class. That's every single person. God said, I made you in my image. I created you to be with me. I created you to reflect all of the love and creativity and imaginative behavior and to be a worker. And I will stand with you because you belong to me. There is nothing that disqualifies you. Nothing that disqualifies you. Right? And I think the people that I have met, I've had conversations with some of you here, the people that I have met that really understand the love, that they are loved in a intentional, passionate, welcoming, invitational, liberating way are the people that have been way down some roads that they shouldn't have gone down. Because they've seen what love, actually encountering God's love, does within their souls, right? It rearranges their life. It disrupts their world. It reorients their heart. Because Jesus stands in solidarity with them. And so what do we do with this? I think the first verse of chapter 3 is pretty straightforward. It says this. It says, therefore, I don't know if I gave him this. This is what it says. It says, therefore, brothers and sisters who share in this heavenly calling, right? Man, that is a good line. Therefore, brothers and sisters who share in this heavenly calling, right, of following Jesus, fix your thoughts on Jesus, whom we acknowledge as our apostle and high priest, the one that stands with us. Fix your eyes on that. And so I don't know what that looks like. That could be literal or metaphorical, but I think that's the invitation for us. Is that maybe you're in a space where you're deconstructing your faith and you're going, I don't even know what this is anymore. What am I even doing here on Wednesday night? I walked myself into a church. Fix your eyes on Jesus. He just might take you to the places of healing. Maybe you've been in church your whole life and you're like, I don't know, I'm just kind of here because like this is the thing that we do. I don't think that's most of us in here, but there's probably some of us who just spent our life in church. And maybe your heart for God has just sort of in this numbed state. And I think this is the same thing. I think the same invitation is there for you, which is fix your eyes on Jesus. Go to the Gospels. I mean, this is what DJ was talking about last week, right? Like, who wants a renewed passion for Jesus, right? Like, go to John's Gospel. I don't know how you can't be just absolutely enthralled with the way Jesus moves and speaks and who he engages, what he cares about, what he thinks about. Or maybe you're just the person that's like, man, I don't know. I just need some fire back in my life. I need some affection and some hunger for the Lord. And I think the invitation is the same. I think I'm just going to end here. I have some application stuff, but I think that's probably enough for now. But truly, my hope is as we study this book, I think there's so many. I would encourage you to read ahead, reread some of the things that DJ read last week. Reread these passages, because I think what the writer of Hebrews is trying to is an apology to believe that Jesus is the true example of God. Right? And if you call yourself a Christian, you call yourself a Jesus follower, that's where we hang our hat. Right? There's a lot of other things that people hang their hats on, but that's what we hang our hat on. And so I just want to take a moment. David, where are you at? Oh, you're right here. Hey, buddy. I just want to have a moment of worship and prayer kind of in response to this. And then we'll close up. But actually, let me pray, and then we'll worship together for a minute. God, thank you that your definition of holiness is not about retreating. It's actually about drawing near to us. That there's nothing about our life that disqualifies us from your love, that it's actually the things that we feel like disqualify us that you press into with more power, with more healing. It's the places that we are afraid of that you want to touch with love. Thank you, God, that you chose to take on this human experience that we experience. That we have a God that relates. That no part of our life is somehow unrelatable or untouchable, or you get it all. Every question, every confusing moment, every like, what the heck, God, where are you? He's like, yeah, I know. I feel far, but I'm not. So I just thank you for that, God. I thank you for this message here in Hebrews and these passages, that you came to join us. So be with us as we worship now. In Jesus' name, amen.